The message arrived just after midnight, lighting up the phone screen in the dark bedroom. Aisha was half asleep when she saw it, but the words snapped her awake instantly. It was not meant for her. She knew that at once. The sentence was short, careless, and cruel in its honesty. It spoke of plans, of silence, of making sure she never found out. Her heart began to pound as if it understood the truth before her mind did. She sat up slowly, the room suddenly unfamiliar. The man beside her slept peacefully, unaware that the world he shared with her had just cracked. Aisha read the message. Again, hoping it would change, hoping she had misunderstood. But the words stayed the same. They burned deeper each time. Her hand shook as she locked the phone and stared at the wall, feeling something cold spread through her chest. By morning, the house looked normal. Sunlight filled the kitchen. Omar drank his tea, scanning the news, calm and composed. He smiled at her and asked if she slept well. Aisha answered without thinking, her voice steady, surprising even herself. Inside, questions screamed. How long? How deep? How could someone lie so easily and still look kind? She went about her day as if nothing had happened. She dropped the kids at school, drove to work, greeted her colleagues. But every sound felt distant. Every smile felt forced. Her mind replayed the message again and again, searching for meaning between the lines. It wasn't just about another person. It was about decisions, about choices made without her. About trust quietly dismantled. At work, Aisha sat at her desk and stared at her computer screen. Numbers and emails blurred together. She remembered the early days of her career when she and Omar had dreamed side by side. They used to plan their futures, over late dinners, believing success was something they would earn together. She had supported him through risks and setbacks. She had shared her ideas freely, believing they were building the same life. That belief now felt foolish. By the afternoon, pieces began to connect. A project she had worked on for months had recently been reassigned. Credit she expected never came. A promotion she had been promised quietly disappeared. At the time, she had blamed timing, politics, bad luck. Now the pattern was impossible to ignore. Someone had been guiding events from behind the scenes. Someone who knew her well. When she returned home that evening, she watched Omar closely. The way he spoke, the way he avoided certain topics, the way his phone never left his side. Every small habit became evidence. Each glance felt rehearsed. The man she thought she knew began to feel like a stranger wearing a familiar face. That night, after everyone was asleep, Aisha took his phone. Her heart raced as she unlocked it, half hoping she would find nothing. But the truth was waiting, neatly arranged. Messages, emails, plans written with confidence. There was no apology in them, no doubt, only justification. He believed he was doing what was necessary. He believed she would understand if she ever found out. Understanding was the one thing she could not offer. The betrayal was not loud. It did not explode into shouting or tears. Settled slowly, heavily. It was the realization that while she had been honest, he had been strategic. While she had trusted, he had calculated. The life they built together had been used as a shield for actions taken against her. Aisha sat on the edge of the bed until morning, her thoughts sharp and relentless. Anger came, but it was controlled. Pain followed, but it did not break her. What surprised her most was the clarity. Something inside her shifted. She knew with calm certainty that things could never return to how they were. In the days that followed, she said nothing. Silence became her protection. She observed instead. She listened. Omar spoke freely, unaware that his version of events no longer held power. He talked about work pressure, about tough decisions, about sacrifices. Each word revealed more of how he saw himself. Not as someone who betrayed, but as someone who adapted. Aisha began to understand the depth of the wrong done to her. It was not just emotional, it was professional, personal. He had stepped ahead by stepping over her. He had used her ideas, her trust, her patience. And when consequences appeared, he had prepared to let her carry the weight at night. She lay, awake, staring at the ceiling, asking herself what justice looked like. She did not want chaos. She did not want to destroy everything, but she wanted balance. She wanted acknowledgement. She wanted him to feel, even briefly, the shock she carried. In her chest, revenge entered her thoughts quietly, not as rage, but as possibility. She told herself it was about fairness, about protecting herself, about ensuring this could never happen again. Yet deep down, she knew there was more. There was a desire to make him see her pain reflected back at him. Still, she moved carefully. Every step was measured. She gathered memories, documents, timelines, not to act yet, but to prepare. Knowledge became her strength. While Omar believed the secret was safe, Aisha was already changing. She stopped sharing her thoughts. She stopped asking for reassurance. She began to rebuild herself in silence. Friends noticed the distance in her eyes, colleagues sensed her sharp focus. Something about her presence shifted. She was no longer open. She was alert. The betrayal had taken something from her, but it had also awakened something else. A resolve she did not know she possessed. The story of her life was no longer something happening to her. It was something she would shape deliberately. As the first stage of shock faded, a harder question took its place. What would she do with the truth she now carried? Use it as a weapon or as a shield? The answer had not yet formed, but one thing was certain. The woman who had trusted without question was gone. Days turned into weeks, and Aisha learned how to live with two versions of reality. One was the life everyone saw: routines, polite words, calm faces. The other lived inside her, sharp and restless, always measuring, always alert. She had stopped reacting. Instead, she watched. Every move Omar made felt like a signal. Every silence felt loud. At work, she moved differently now. She arrived early, stayed focused, spoke only when necessary. She noticed how decisions were made, who influenced, whom and where credit quietly shifted. Patterns became clear. Omar was not reckless. He was careful, patient, and convinced he was right. He spoke about success as survival, about ambition as responsibility. In his mind, the world rewarded those who acted first. Aisha began to feel the weight of that thinking. It explained everything. He had not acted out of hate. He had acted out of belief. He believed that if he did not step forward, someone else would. He believed she would forgive him because she always had. That belief hurt more than the betrayal itself. Late at night, the house was quiet. Aisha opened her laptop and organized what she knew: emails, meeting notes, shared files. Each document was proof of her work, her ideas, her role. She did not rush. She read everything slowly, learning how the pieces fit. With each discovery, her pulse steadied. Control returned, one detail at a time. But control came. With a cost, sleep grew light. Her thoughts moved fast, circling the same questions. What would revenge give her? Would it fix the damage or only expose it? She imagined different endings. In some, she spoke up publicly, watching shock spread across the room. In others, she stayed silent and walked away, carrying her pride but losing justice. None of the visions felt clean. During the day, Omar tried to reconnect. He noticed her distance and filled the space with concern. He asked if she was tired, if work was too much, if something was wrong. His voice was gentle, practiced. Aisha listened without responding. She wondered if he truly believed his kindness could cover his choices. One evening, he spoke about a promotion. His tone was careful, hopeful. He described new responsibilities, new opportunities, and how it would benefit the family. Aisha nodded, her face calm. Inside, her chest tightened. She knew what stood behind that opportunity. She knew the truth. had been built into it like a hidden flaw. That night, she stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized herself. Her eyes looked older, sharper. She had lost something soft, something trusting. In its place was focus. Not anger, not yet, but resolve. Revenge was no longer a thought she pushed away. It was a path she studied. Still, doubt followed her. She remembered who she had been before all this. A woman who believed in fairness, who solved problems with words, not exposure. She feared what crossing that line would do to her. Would she become like him? Would winning feel hollow? At work, a colleague mentioned a review meeting coming soon. Senior leadership would be present. Decisions would be finalized. The timing struck her like a signal. This was the moment she had been unconsciously waiting for. Everything she had gathered could surface then. The truth could no longer be ignored. The pressure built quickly. Each day brought her closer to that meeting. Each night, the choice weighed heavier. She practiced conversations in her head, imagining reactions, consequences, fallout. She knew revenge would not be quiet. It would echo. It would touch more lives than just theirs. Meanwhile, Omar grew more confident. He spoke openly about the future, about plans made with certainty. He trusted the silence between them, mistaking it for peace. He did not see the tension in her stillness. He did not understand that silence can be sharper than words. Aisha's body felt the strain before her mind admitted it. Her shoulders stayed tight. Her breath grew shallow. She lived in a constant state of readiness. Friends noticed and asked questions. She smiled and changed the subject. This was her battle. She would carry it alone. One afternoon, she received an email confirming the meeting agenda. Her name was listed near the end. Small detail, but meaningful. It meant she would speak after Omar. It meant she would hear his version first. The thought made her heart race. That evening, she sat in her car long after arriving home, hands resting on the steering wheel. She thought about consequences, about dignity, about the difference between justice and destruction. Revenge promised. A moment of power, but it also promised lasting damage. She wondered if she was ready to live with that when she entered the house. Omar was waiting. He asked if she was okay. She met his eyes and saw something new, their uncertainty. Perhaps he sensed the shift. Perhaps part of him knew the truth never stays buried forever. That night, sleep refused to come. Aisha stared at the ceiling, replaying her life in fragments. The early trust, the shared dreams, the slow unraveling. She realized she was no longer deciding whether to act. She was deciding how. By morning, a strange calm settled over her. The chaos in her thoughts sharpened into clarity. She would not rush. She would not explode. Whatever she chose would be deliberate. The conflict was no longer just between her and Omar. It was within her. Between the woman she had been and the woman she was becoming. Between the desire to strike back and the need to protect her own soul. As the day of the meeting approached, one truth became unavoidable. Revenge was not just about hurting him. It was about proving to herself that she mattered. That she could not be erased or used, and soon she would have to decide what mattered. More making him fall or letting herself rise. The morning of the meeting arrived clear and quiet, almost cruel in its calm. Aisha dressed with care, choosing simplicity over armor. She wanted nothing to distract from her words. As she drove to work, her hands were steady, though her heart moved fast. This was no longer about surprise or anger. This was about choice. The building felt colder than usual. People greeted her, unaware that something heavy walked beside her. She took her seat in the conference room and placed her folder on the table. Inside were months of proof, neatly ordered. Each page carried weight. Each page represented a different ending. Omar entered a few minutes later. He looked confident, relaxed, almost pleased. He nodded at her, a small smile on his face. For a moment, Aisha felt the pull of memory, the man he used to be. Or maybe the man she believed he was. That moment passed quickly. The meeting began. One speaker after another presented numbers, goals, plans. Aisha listened but did not hear much. Her focus stayed on Omar. When his turn came, he stood smoothly and spoke with ease. He explained the project, the vision, the success. He spoke as if the work was his alone. His voice never shook. As he talked, Aisha noticed something subtle. A slight pause before certain details. A careful choice of words. He was confident, but not fearless. He knew the ground beneath him was not solid. He simply believed it would hold Dot when he finished. The room filled with quiet approval. Heads nodded. Notes were taken. The future he had described felt almost real. Then it was her turn. Aisha stood and felt the room shift. She did not open the folder. Instead, she met the eyes of the people around the table. Her voice was calm, clear, and steady. She spoke about the project from the beginning. About early ideas, long nights, risks taken. She described her role without accusation, without heat. Just facts. As she spoke, she watched Omar. His posture stiffened. His eyes dropped briefly, then lifted again. He was listening now, she explained. How decisions were made, how credit moved, how silence allowed misunderstandings to grow. She did not expose everything. She did not attack. She simply corrected the story, placed truth where assumption had lived. When questions came, she answered them directly. When clarification was needed, she provided it. The room changed. The energy shifted from admiration to reflection. People began to see the fuller picture. Omar tried to speak once, gently adding a point. Aisha did not interrupt. She let him finish. Then she responded with precision. No emotion, no edge. Just clarity. By the end, the folder remained closed. The meeting ended without drama. No voices raised, no sudden judgments. Something had broken quietly. Illusions, once cracked, do not repair icily. On the hallway afterward, Omar approached her. His face was pale, his voice low. He asked if they could talk. Aisha nodded, not because she owed him anything, but because she was no longer afraid of the conversation. They sat in a small room away from others. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Omar sighed and admitted what he had done, though his words were careful. He spoke of pressure, fear, the need to move ahead. He said he never meant to hurt her. Said he thought she would understand. Aisha listened without interruption. When he finished, she spoke once. She told him understanding was not the same as acceptance. She told him trust does not survive strategy. She told him that choices, once made, do not disappear just because regret arrives late. He looked at her then. Truly looked at her and realized something had ended. In the weeks that followed, consequences unfolded slowly. Roles were reviewed. Credit was reassigned. Opportunities shifted. Nothing exploded, but nothing stayed the same. Omar remained, but the confidence he once carried was gone. He had been seen at home. The distance grew clearer. They spoke when necessary, avoided when possible. The house felt quieter, lighter in some ways, emptier in others. Aisha did not rush decisions. She allowed time to settle where it needed to. Friends noticed a change in her. She stood taller. She laughed more easily. The tension that once lived in her shoulders began to fade. She slept better. The storm inside her had passed, leaving stillness behind. One evening, as she walked alone, she thought about revenge. How close it had been, how tempting, how easily she could have destroyed everything. She wondered what that version of her life would have felt like. Powerful, perhaps, but heavy. What she had chosen was harder. It required restraint, required trust in herself rather than punishment of another. It did not erase the pain, but it did not multiply it either. Aisha realized something important then. Revenge would have tied her forever to the moment of betrayal. Walking away with truth intact allowed her to move forward. She did not forgive easily. She did not forget. But she healed. The wrong done to her did not define her ending. Her response did not, and in that quiet victory, she found something stronger than revenge: peace.